Morning, everybody. We're going to start off with a bhajan today because it's a beautiful spring day. Time to remember Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya with the Radha Krishna bowl. So this song is very special because it's written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it is one of the songs that he wrote for patrolling around town and reminding everybody of Krishna. And with Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, the soul gets uplifted, and then the message goes in. Radha Krishna bol bol, bolo re shobai. Radha Krishna bol bol, bolo re shobai. E shikadiya, shabna diya, peche leche gorita. E shikadiya, shabna diya, peche leche gorita. Hari bol, shikadiya. Hari bol, bolo re, shikadiya. Radha Krishna bol, bolo re shobai. Radha Krishna bol, bolo re shobai. Krishna Jai Maya Boshe Chato Beshe Kachura Bulu Baiche Kacho Beshe Abu Reche Maya Roshe Hari Jiv Krishna Das, Hey Vishwas, Leto Jugunat, Hari Bol, Bole Jiv Krishna Das, Hari Bol, Bole Jiv Krishna Das, Radha Krishna Bol. Shri Radha Krishna bol, bolo re shobai. Krishna bolle jabe, bhulakta habe. Chor diyan ki boli thai. Krishna bolle jabe, bhulakta habe. Diyan ki boli thai. Krishna bolle jabe, bhulakta habe. Chor diyan ki boli thai. Hari bol, bolo Krishna bolbe jabe. Bolo Krishna bolbe jabe. Radha Krishna bol bol, bolo re shobai. Radha Krishna bol bolo re shobai. Radha Krishna bolo, Shange cholo, Matra Vita Chai. Radha Krishna bolo, Shange cholo, Matra Vita. Radha Krishna bolo, Hari bol, bolo Radha Krishna bolo, Radha Krishna bolo, bolo re shobai. Radha Krishna bolo, Charana too. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Hayam Dadati Swapadantikam Adadana Stridam Danter Idam Yache Puna Puna Srimad Rupa Padamboja Tuli Sam Janma Janmani Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Namashrishtam Manamapi Shachiputramatra Swarupam Shri Rupam Tasyagrajam Uruparim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramoho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratitakripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Hey Guru Gyanadadina Bandho Swarandadata Kurunaika Sindho Vrindavana Sinahitavatar Prasida Radha Pranaya Pracharo Hey Dinabandho Kurunaika Sindho Kuru Prasadam Maimanda Mudhe Laksha Parade Bahupapa Gadhe Tatpada Padmestu Matishcha Krishne Pratar Shimad Navadvipe Dvi Netram Dvi Bhujam Gurum Varabhaya Pradam Shantam Smarit Tannam Purvakam Tvam Gopika Vishwaraves Tanayanti Kesi Sevadi Karini Guru Nijapada Padme Dasyam Pradaya Kurumam Rajakhanane Shri Ratangri Sevana Rase Sukhinim Sukhabdao Shri Guru Paramananda Premananda Palaprad Rajananda Pradhananda Sivayamma Niyojaya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Barshabana Videvi Dayataya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Jwala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Sri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudha Siddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gorakishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Bhujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sakchit Ananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virvaba Bomestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kulpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Goratushe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Surupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratau Pangor Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarvaswapadam Bojao Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadmata Srimad Nagara Sinhasanastao Srimad Radha Shila Govinda Devao Krishtali Bisi Vyamanu Smarami Srimad Rasarasadam Bhivam Shiva Tatatastita Karshan Venu Swaner Gopir Gopinatha Shri Estunaha Etina Thakur Goriyaki Karyachina Atmasat Etinera Charan Vandon Tine Mornar Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Bande Nanjavajastrinam Pararinam Abhikshnasha Yasam Harigato Gitam Punati Bhuvanatrayam Hantaya Madrabala Haridasavaryo Yadrama Krishna Charanashvarasha Pramodaha Manam Taroti Sahago Ganayostayo Yat Paniya Suyavasakandana Kandamulai Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Priyayai Keshavasicha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Shri Nrsimha Jai Nrsimha Jai Jai Nrsimha Prahlada Desha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bringa Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata Abhutanam Adharmasya Tadatmanam Srajamyaham Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Chajuskritam Dharma Samstapanartaya Sambhavami Yuge Yuge Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mami Vaishyasi Yukvaivam Atmanam Matparayanaha Sarvadharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja Ahang Tang Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishami Masuchaha Shru Shru Sho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtan Shevanat Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Pradyantaksto Hibhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tadara Justamo Bhava Kamalubadayaschaye Chaitayatera Navidham Stitam Sattve Prasidati Evang Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana Mukta Sangasya Jayate Vidyate Raya Grantischijante Sarva Samshaya Shiante Chasya Karmani Drishtaivat Manishvare Malihai Karishe Bijarupan Shravana Kirtana Jale Kare Shechan Tahan Vistari Tahoy Pali Prema Pal Ihan Mali Sheche Nitya Shravanadi Jal Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartameka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Kripam Budhir Yastamaham Prabhadye Kalan Nashtam Bhakti Yogam Nijam Ya Pradush Kartam Krishna Chaitanya Nama Avirbhutas Tasya Padaravinde Gadam Gadam Liatam Chitta Ajanulambita Bujao Kanakavadatal Samkirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Takshao Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagapriyakaro Karunavataro Matsamo Nasti Papa Manaparadi Chikashana Parihare Pilajja Me Kimbruve Purushottama Yuvati Lam Yata Yuni Yunam Cha Yuvatau Yata Mano Piramate Tadvan Mano Miramatam Twayi Pumao Skalita Padanam Pumir Eva Valambanam Tvayi jata paradhanam tvameva sharanam prabho. Govinda palave radhe prartaye tomaham sada. Tvariyam iti janatu govindo mam tvayasaha. Radhe vrindavanadishe karunamritavahani. Kripaya nijapadabja dasyam mayam pradiyatam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Gaura Premanande, Hare Hare Bo. I'm reading from the Bhagavad Gita, the 13th chapter, and this is text number 5. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rishi Bir Bahuda Gitam Chando Bir Vividai Pratak Brahma Sutra Padaish Chaiva Hetumad Bir Vinishchitai. Rishi Bi means by the wise sages, Bahuda in many ways. Gitam described, Chandobi by Vedic hymns, Vividai, various, Pratak, variously, Brahma Sutra of the Vedanta Sutra, Padai, by the aphorisms, Cha also Eva, certainly, Hetu Madbi, with cause and effect, Vinishchitai, certain. Translation, that knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in the Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the highest authority in explaining this knowledge. Still, as a matter of course, learned scholars and standard authorities always give evidence from previous authorities. Krishna is explaining this most controversial point regarding the duality and non-duality of the soul and the supersoul by referring to a scripture, the Vedanta, which is accepted as authority. First, he said, this is according to different sages. As far as the sages are concerned, besides himself, Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra, is a great sage. And in the Vedanta Sutra, duality is perfectly explained. And Vyasadeva's father, Parashara, is also a great sage. And he writes in his books of religiosity, Ahang Twang Cha Tatanye. We, you, I, and the various other living entities are all transcendental, although in material bodies. Now we are fallen into the ways of the three modes of material nature according to our different karma. As such, some are on higher levels and some are on the lower nature, or in the lower nature. The higher and lower natures exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the supersoul, which is infallible, is uncontaminated by the three qualities of nature and is transcendental. Similarly, in the original Vedas, a distinction between the soul, the supersoul, and the body is made, especially in the Katha Upanishad. There are many great sages who have explained this, and Parashara is considered principal among them. The word Chandobi refers to the various Vedic literatures. The Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, which is a branch of the Yajurveda, describes nature, the living entity, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated before, Kshetra is the field of activities, and there are two kinds of Kshetragya, the individual living entity and the Supreme Living Entity. As stated in the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.5, Brahmapucham Pratishta, there is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy known as Annamaya, dependence upon food for existence. This is a materialistic realization of the Supreme. Then in Pranamaya, after realizing the Supreme Absolute Truth in food, one can realize the absolute truth in the living symptoms or life forms. And Jnanamoy, realization extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. Then there is Brahman realization called Vijnanamoy, in which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity himself. The next and supreme stage is Anandamoy, realization of the all blissful nature. Thus, there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which are called Brahmapucham. Out of these, the first 3, Annamoy, Pranamoy, and Jnanamoy, involve the fields of activity of the living entities. Transcendental to all these fields of activities is the Supreme Lord, who is called Anandamoy. The Vedanta Sutra also describes the Supreme by saying, Anandamayo Bhyasat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy. To enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands into Vijnanamoy, Pranamoy, Jnanamoy, and Annamoy. In the field of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, and different from him is the Anandamoy. That means that if the living entity decides to enjoy in dovetailing himself with the Anandamoy, then he becomes perfect. This is the real picture of the Supreme Lord. As the supreme knower of the field, the living entity as the subordinate knower, and the nature of the field of activities. One has to search for this truth in the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. It is mentioned here that the codes of the Brahma Sutra are very nicely arranged according to cause and effect. Some of the sutras or aphorisms are na vidyad ashrute, not mashrute, and parat tu touch shrute. The first aphorism indicates the field of activities, the second indicates the living entity, and the third indicates the Supreme Lord, the summum bonum among the manifestations of the living entities. So as Prabhupada mentions here in the first paragraph, that is that now we are fallen into the ways of the 3 modes of material nature according to our different karma. As such, some are on higher levels and some are in the lower nature. The higher and lower natures exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. So this is an important point, which is brought up as the basic understanding of the cause of material life and the cause of all suffering. It's good to know that there is a cause of all suffering, because if it was random or meaningless, then we would be hopeless. In fact, there are some existentialist philosophers who just say ridiculously and absurdly that the world has no meaning. There's only depression, darkness, and no reason for the suffering. It's just happening randomly. However, luckily here, we're dealing with commonsensical personalities like Krishna, who's the most commonsensical of all. And even as he's the supreme authority, he's pointing to others, Rishi B and the Chandobir. He's referring back to the authorized scriptures, which are co-eternal with him and which give us the direction through so that we can come out of the suffering of the material world. And for those who are advancing in spiritual life, it's extremely important to sharpen their minds through hearing Shastra and be directed by Shastra. In fact, Shastra means to be ruled. It comes from the root word shas, and this means to rule over. It's not a really popular idea these days. People think it's easier just to do your own thing, but actually that's not true. It's easier to submit oneself to a perfect authority and be ruled by him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because if you're not ruled by the Shastra or the rules given in the Shruti and the Smriti and the Panchatraik Vidi, then you'll be ruled by Shastra, which means the sword. And material nature has a fine way of cutting, so that sooner or later we decide to voluntarily follow the Shastra rather than be ruled by the Shastra. So what is that original cause of all suffering? It is avidya. Vid, like in the modern day words in English, which are derived from Sanskrit, video, and to see, to be able to understand something. There's a meaning in avidya, which is the opposite of sight or vision or insight into what is reality. And there is a way in which, when one wants to come to the perfection of life, there are different choices. It's described that there's a field of ignorance, and that is the material field, and it fills up with kleshas, or various kinds of miseries of innumerable combinations and permutations. And then you can try to individually pluck them out, just like if you had a big field and you tried to pull out each one of the weeds by hand. It would be a very laborious task and wouldn't necessarily be successful. Or you could simply put a parking lot over it, or put a patio over the whole thing and be done with it all at once. So the process of Vedic knowledge means really to understand the overall cause of all the different various miseries, and not try to deal with them individually, as in some cases people try to do prayaschitta, or individual rectification for various kinds of sins they've committed. So avidya means I don't know what I'm doing, because I don't understand the difference between myself as the Atma, or the Purusha, and the body. And when I come into knowledge, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this acts as a fire, jnana agni sarvakarmanam. He says all the different kinds of karmas, which are some in subtle form, and some forming into seeds, and then some are sprouting, and then some are fructifying and giving me miseries now. All of these are caused originally by avidya, or ignorance of my real self. So he says, when you come into the light of knowledge, then that light actually destroys all of the sinful reactions, because one has no intention of acting sinfully when he or she comes into knowledge and becomes oriented towards the real purpose of life and is actually tasting it. So it's important to have this in mind. And then also, as mentioned here, there are higher and lower natures. And these are because of people's different associations with the modes of material nature. And just as there are higher and lower positions in the material world, there are higher and lower positions in spiritual life as well. And there is a steady path, a staircase that one can take to come to the highest level. Coming out of ignorance first means to embrace the process of Krishna consciousness. And this is a long stage that we go through in the material world, as mentioned here as the Brahmapucha, the Annamoy. Can imagine a living entity that only relates to God or Brahman through foodstuff, anna. And you can see some living entities that, like these little plankton that live in the ocean. They just sit there all day and absorb whatever nutrients they can. And that's their connection to Brahman. And then the pranamoy, there's a sense of life, but it's very rudimentary. Manamoy, when one starts to make choices. And Vijnanamoy, one starts to intellectualize, and even at that point to speculate about the difference between matter and spirit. But then an Anandamoy, the highest stage, which is rarely achieved, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that there are many people who take to spiritual life, but very few of them come to know Anandamoy, because they're not properly situated in the authority structure to get perfect knowledge from the perfect source. So it's helpful to know how to get perfect knowledge, how to come out of ignorance. And then it's important to know when one's on the path of Krishna consciousness, the various stages, so that one can identify them and be encouraged as one's taking steps along that path. Because material nature is constantly with us while we're still in this body. And we have to feel encouraged that we're following the path and making steady progress. So let's just take a quick look at the path of progress of Bharat Maharaj and try to relate it to different stages in our own practices. So Bharat Maharaj was a great king, and kings are generally absorbed in doing their worldly duties. And that's the stage at which most people come into the world and think about how success really means making material progress. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, what is night for all beings is time of awakening for the self-controlled. And what is the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. So this means there are some people that are awakened to spiritual knowledge and some that are asleep. And the materialistic person thinks that these spiritual practitioners are really wasting their time. They're missing out on a lot. And the spiritual practitioners see that the materialist is wasting his time. So which is right? Well, actually, the spiritualist is right, because material life is over in a flash, and whatever I've accumulated in this lifetime is left behind. And really, I have nothing to show for it, even if I become a really successful person materially. However, if I miss out on any spiritual practice, there's no stature whatsoever. I'm simply swept away by the modes of material nature. So this worldly consciousness is a dangerous situation. And even if you become a big shot, it's no less dangerous than somebody who's a sweeper in the street. So this is the stage of material consciousness of ahankar, where one thinks, I am the body, I am the mind. And Krishna says, Yasyatma buddhi kuna petri dhatuke, sodi kalatradishu bhauma ejadi. So tirtha buddhi salilena karichij janeshu abhigeshu saeva gokara. Krishna told this to the residents at Kurukshetra during the eclipse, that a person who worships the body and thinks this is my homeland, and therefore it's worshipable, and flies the flag and sings the anthem and tears come to their eyes, this person is like a cow or an ass. And similarly, he says, people who go to holy places, but they just go to take a bath there, but they don't sit down and listen to the sages that are there that teach spiritual knowledge. Consciousness is like the cow or an ass, like an animal. Yasyatma buddhi kuna petri dhatuke. The body is a bag, and it's got kapapita bayu. It's got the just elements, lower material elements, and actually they're described in the Panchratric and in the yogic literature as really disgusting. They're impure. The body's always impure. It's always emanating impure substances, and therefore one has to constantly be cleaning it to make sure that it's presentable in one's practice of Panchratric or yogic practice. And so if a person thinks, I am this body, then Krishna says, you're an animal. So this is material life, ahankar, and somebody thinks I'm the doer and so forth. There's a very low consciousness and completely in ignorance. So Krishna says, prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara ityame bina prakriti ashura. This prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimunatma kartaham iti manyate. That I'm the doer, and I'm actually the body. he says, vimudha, such a person is very, very foolish. So if such a person becomes fortunate, somehow or other, comes in contact with spiritual knowledge, and there's a seed planted within his or her heart, then there can be a spiritual awakening from this darkness of illusion, this dream of material life, where there's only suffering and no happiness. And so this is represented by Bharat going to the forest. So first he's a king. He's working in his duties as a king, interacting with family members and so forth. But he's a very fortunate soul. And he's given as an example by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami as someone who had the wherewithal to detach himself from material life and go off for spiritual realization. So this is the awakening of the intelligence. And kama dinam katina katita palita durnideshas. This bad masters of the lust, anger, greed, and so forth come to an end when someone's intelligence wakes up by good fortune, by association, and then one can have the impetus that I'm going to take up spiritual life. This is the greatest day in the life of a living entity in the material world who decides that now I'm going to make spiritual progress. So as Bharat goes to the forest, see that he has spiritual advancement as the goal of life, no longer maintaining a kingdom or the status quo in the material world. And Krishna says, if somebody does this, as soon as the living entity acts and decides that I want to find God, then Krishna is right there. Tesham satata yuktanam pachitam priti purvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayanti te. He's ready to give intelligence at every moment. And he's always ready. It's not that he simply activates his, or becomes aware of the living entity after we become aware that the goal of life is spiritual. He's always waiting. And the very moment that we decide that we want to make spiritual progress, he starts making arrangements for us so that we can come closer to him. So there's a sense right away that somebody's helping me. There's somebody within who's helping me move forward. So what happens after that, there's this contrast, and that is that I've been in the material world for many, many lifetimes, and now I've decided to take up spiritual life. And in the beginning, it seems plausible, exciting, but then come the struggles. Because how is it that one can go on with one's duties in the material world and at the same time cultivate spiritual life? How does one overcome the great obstacles that are there, that arise within one's own mind and the pullings of the senses? So we see this as Bharat went to the forest and he took up his practice very, very seriously. He was taking several baths every day. It's mentioned that his hair was always wet because he was staying so clean by bathing in the crystalline waters of the river. And he was meditating on the Lord within the sun and chanting his mantra. And his heart started to soften and tears would come to his eyes as he was remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then there was a test and a distraction came, and it was a deer that had been frightened by the roar of a lion, had tried to jump over the stream near where Bharat was meditating and had miscarried and dropped her calf into the water. And then the deer herself had died. Meanwhile, Bharat opened his eyes and he saw the little baby deer and picked it up and rescued it. So that started the great distraction in his life. So this can happen to anyone. That means I take the spiritual life and I'm very serious about it, but something comes along that distracts me and takes me in another direction. Sometimes people are lost for many, many years. They lose time. from practicing spiritual life because they get so distracted into something else. And their desire to perform devotional service gets eclipsed. So one has to not only perform devotional service, but one has to be careful not to get pulled away from the path for any reason, because there's no good reason to be pulled away from the path. And vigilance is recommended throughout the Bhagavatam. So what happened to Bharat? He died thinking of the deer. He became obsessed with the deer. In fact, all the emotion that he had developed for the Supreme Personality of Godhead got transferred to that deer. And this is how powerful the mind is. We should never think that the mind has been fully conquered. In fact, the Bhagavatam says we should think of it like a wild animal. That sometimes people, they catch a wild animal and they bring him home. Yeah, isn't he cute? And they play with him for 5-10 years. And then one day they come home and everybody's dead. The animal got out of its cage and it just decided to eat everybody. Wild animals are unpredictable. And so is the mind. It can come back and devour us. So one has to take the lesson to be very, very careful, not to let the mind somehow or other wander off the path of spiritual life and become absorbed again in material consciousness, in worldly consciousness, or to start making offenses towards devotees. However, if someone takes to the practice of spiritual life, Krishna is so kind that he reminds that person in the next life that you were performing spiritual practices and now you can take them up again. He mentions this in the 6th chapter. By purva samskar, he says, by previous impressions from his last life or lives, you were practicing, now you can take it up again. In the case of Bharat, because he was so advanced, he remembered as soon as he died, he took birth as a deer, because whatever you think of at the time of death, really it's not just an accident that he thought of a deer, he was absorbed. And whatever we're absorbed in, whatever our mind goes to naturally, is the kind of body that can be offered to us, because nature is very accommodating. Shariram yadavatnoti yat shat yukramatishvara grihit vaitani samyati vayor gandham ivashayat. It's very subtle process, just like air passing over the garden or over a dirty place. It picks up the scent. So there's a kind of a color to our consciousness. So we have to purify the consciousness. It shouldn't be attracted to the material nature, otherwise we'll get a material body. Bharat got a body of a deer, and he remembered. What a shock that is. Once Prabhupada, I heard a talk he was giving, he said, you go to sleep as a man, he said, death is like this. Go to sleep as a man, wake up as a dog. This is like death. You go to sleep for a little while and you wake up and you got a new body. And it's actually a very scary experience. Like, there's ways, if we're unconscious, anybody can do anything to us. And when we leave the body, we're not in control. Material nature is. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying at 5 years old, Kaumara acharet pragno dharmam bhagavatamiha durlabham manasam janma tarapya dhruvam artadam. He said, make sure that you take advantage of this valuable opportunity and start when you're young, because you need the momentum to develop this the fixity of purpose in spiritual life. And you should develop some emotion for the Lord, achuta bhava. You need to have some bhava, some actual emotion for Krishna that compels you to want to see him, to want to hear about him, to want to chant his names, to want to serve him, to want to be with his devotees, and to exclusively so. You don't want anything else. When we develop this kind of feeling, then when we leave this body, we obviously, by the power of our consciousness, are accommodated with a higher level of service. Here are a few reasons that Prabhupada mentions in his commentaries why Bharat Maharaj fell down. First one he says is foolishness. So don't be foolhardy. Don't be fooled by material nature. Keep yourself fortified so you don't get taken in by the con game that the Maya is always playing to try to pull us back in. Don't be foolish. The second is misplaced compassion. And this is something that Krishna chastised Arjuna for, because he said, Asochanam anvasochastram pragyavanam shtabhasase gatasuna gatasus cha nanusochandi pandita. After Arjuna gave a litany of reasons why he shouldn't fight the war at Kurukshetra, because it was immoral, unethical, there were going to be families that were displaced, and these are good moral reasons. But then Krishna says, you sound like a pundit, but you're a fool. You don't know the first thing about spiritual life. You're not your body. Wake up. Stop meditating on this sentimental idea that I'm my body, these are my family members, this is my country, and so forth. This is Maya. Of course, we live in this world and we have to interact with it, but don't absorb your heart in this foolish idea that I'm part of this world. Chitraketu had this propensity, and Narada Muni and Angira Rishi helped him overcome that. When they came there, he begged them pleadingly, please, I need a son, otherwise I can never be happy. And Angira said, I can do a yagya for you and you'll get a son, but the son will be called Harsha Shoka. It'll cause you some lamentation, even if there is a tiny bit of jubilation. And the king thought, well, every father has some problem with the son, so I can handle it. And then later, of course, he got the son, and the son died. Angira came back with Narada and brought the son back to life to speak to Chitraketu. And the son then, from the perspective of a wandering soul, said, I'm sorry, I don't recognize these people. I'm just passing through. And Chitraketu had a rude awakening, that he was thinking, oh, this is my little son. But actually, these projections that this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my country, this is my wife, this is my husband, and so forth, these are products of the illusory energy. So Bharat really got out there and misplaced compassion, because he thought, well, this deer is not he began thinking of it as his offspring and taking care of it. And little deer are easy to get attached to. You look at it, you think it's cute, and you just get carried away. And the next thing you know, you're floating down the stream of willful neglect of sadhana, which is the last point. Due to this sentiment, he became willfully neglectful of his sadhana. He thought, I'll just take care of the deer. There's a kind of weakness of heart that overcame him. So be careful of that. Don't get swept away. If you feel yourself slipping, or because your sentiments moving towards this illusory idea of life, then take help and tighten it up, because it's a rare opportunity to be able to go through a lifetime fixed in spiritual consciousness. So there's some attitudes that are helpful in doing this. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 6:24, one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. So to have determination, one has to follow the four regulative principles. Because without this, then without performing a little tapasya, then one's senses begin to dictate. And if someone develops some spiritual self-esteem by following the four regulative principles, he or she then starts to feel some spiritual power and determination to go ahead with spiritual life. Prabhupada told one of my godbrothers that if you follow the four regulative principles and chant 16 rounds every day, you'll become as strong as the Himalaya mountains in spiritual life. Also, did you know that Prabhupada lived through the first pandemic in 1918? He was he lived through the pandemic when he was first born. I can't say if it was pandemic, the first one when he was like 2 years old, but there was definitely an epidemic in Calcutta. He said bodies were just laying in the street. And then 1918 was the Spanish flu. Obviously, Prabhupada lived through that. My grandmother didn't. She died in the when my mother was 2 years old. She died, my grandmother, in this during Spanish flu. And then Prabhupada lived. There was another pandemic when Prabhupada came to New York, 1968. That was the Hong Kong flu. And Prabhupada, there's a conversation, Prabhupada speaking to Hayagriva and talking about the Hong Kong flu. Prabhupada got the vaccination. But then he said, this whole world is Hong Kong flu. The whole world is Hong Kong flu. So he said, we have to inoculate ourselves from Maya. So taking it very seriously, developing determination in spiritual life, and taking your inoculation every day by chanting. Don't let your mind and senses go wild. Take your chanting first. The first priority. Make sure you associate with the holy name and hear from Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Fortify yourself. Take the vaccination. So after he was a deer, then Bharat came back as Jud Bharat. So this is a time when he became extremely steady and serious in his practice. So already he was a great soul. But now, can you imagine that he made this mistake? He got pulled off the path. He realized the whole thing through the body of a deer. And then he took birth with full knowledge of what he had just been through. So how serious would be? So if we could get a little taste of that, some feeling that this is very serious. I have to practice spiritual life with determination. If we can pray to Jud Bharat, just have an iota of his determination and perspective of the dangers of the world. And as I said the other day, Vyasa says in his commentary to the Yoga Sutras, the yogi who becomes so advanced and sees the subtleties of the material nature becomes as sensitive as an eyeball. It means he's so careful moving around. And he knows even a tiny little speck on the eye can cause a havoc. So similarly, if we become that serious, as Jud Bharat did, when he became the son of a Brahmana who tried to train him in many different ways. Jud Bharat acted like he was dull and couldn't understand anything. And then, of course, at this point, this is a stage of life that we should all aspire to, which is nishta, or absolute steadiness, where we can't be distracted. We're not sleepy during a sadhana. Our senses have been quieted down by our practice, relentless practice every day. The senses start to get quiet, and they are divested of the innate bad qualities that have been there because of the modes of material nature. They become illuminated by the practice of devotional service. We need to come to nishta at least to make further progress. So we see this in the life of Jud Bharat. Now he's totally fixed, and he's not disturbed at all by the external environment at all. So in the Gita 256, Krishna says, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady mind. Dukeshvanu vignamanaha, sukeshu vigataspriha, vitaragabhaya krodha, manmaya. He says, become a stita di, totally fixed in meditation on spiritual life. Stita dir munir uchite. This is called a sage of steady mind. So this is all possible by the process given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a simple path, but it's extremely powerful because, first of all, we're in contact with Krishna directly through his names. There are many mantras in the world, and the active ingredient within the mantra is the name of God. We have a mantra we're chanting over and over again that it's all names of God. There's no beej in it. There's nothing covering it. It's totally name. It's all the name of God. And it's written in the vocative form. And so Hare, Krishna, Rama. Hare is Srimati Radharani. Krishna is the supreme objective of everyone's attention and the all-attractive original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rama means the highest spiritual pleasure. And we're also in there because it's written in vocative form, which means somebody's chanting this mantra. So the living entity is there, the supreme origin of everything, and his internal energy, Radharani. Everything's there when we're chanting the mantra, everything complete. So we cannot have any more complete experience in this world than absorbing ourselves in the Nam. There's nothing like Harinam anywhere. And it is the prime practice to attain Nishta. Harinama, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gatiranyata. So if one takes this very seriously, the simple path by following 4 regulative principles, staying clean in habits and keep the environment clean, and then making a priority of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day with attention, and as well in kirtan, by the power of the name, the Lord's name, one will advance, one will become freed from bad habits, and Krishna will help us to develop the highest stages of love for him. So now we'll take a couple of reflections or questions because we still have 15 minutes left to have a little discussion.
So devotees, you can unmute yourself to ask the questions. And Maharaj, we have some reflections and questions on Facebook, and there are some on chat window also.
Okay.
So should I go with this Facebook? Yeah. Okay. So we have reflection from Krishna Prabhu. He says that just like in an epidemic condition where everyone is being contaminated and dying, still the doctors are appointed by the government. They have to go into the epidemic area and try to treat the person and save them. Hold on. And our duty is like that. The whole atmosphere is epidemic. Whole atmosphere, this Kali Yuga, and still by the superior orders, we have to preach this Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Prabhupada in a lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam 6.2 verses 1 to 5 in Calcutta in January of 1971.
Oh, nice. And here's from Srivatsa. He writes, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. It makes sense to me that by reading Shastra, one can strengthen intelligence and develop a fixed determination to make progress in Krishna consciousness. However, for some reason, I always feel like I'm lacking in my sadhana and that I could be doing better. And this sometimes increases determination, and sometimes it can make me feel like giving up. How do I guarantee steady determination and progress in Krishna consciousness in a way that I progress as fast as possible? Well, one of the symptoms of anishta practice, which means we're unsteady, is that sometimes we feel like it and sometimes we don't. And if we recognize that that's a stage in the practice, we shouldn't become discouraged by it. In fact, there are many places, as I've mentioned before, where Krishna says that keep going, even though you feel unsteady. For instance, Jata Shraddha Makatasu Nirvina Sarvakarmasu Veda Dukat Makankamams Prityage Pyanishvara. That means that even if you know that you want to do this and you're totally fixed on it, but you still can't do it, Krishna says, Tato bhajeta mam prita shraddha lurjurdanishchaya jushamanam statam kamams duko darkam stagaryam. You can feel a little remorseful, but not too much, because you have to keep going. And if you understand that that there's going to be ups and downs, and you keep going. The other way that I've always found effective is to find out what your most fundamental practices are that you should do, and try to stack them in a way that you get them done before everything else. If you can finish your rounds earlier, and if you can do your reading earlier, there's not as much chance for the mind to get interrupted and pulled away in other directions. And also, if you ever find yourself with waning enthusiasm, then do the very minimum that you can, because it's better to put your head in the book, for instance. If your mind says, I'm not interested in this at all, I'd rather look at something else, then just make a deal that at least read one sentence. At least chant 10 mantras. This is a very powerful way to get your 16 rounds going when you don't feel like it, is to say, okay, I'm going to just chant 10 mantras with determination. And it's like priming the pump. It helps to get you started. I like this. Everyone's writing in here. Hare Krishna. Okay. Sukeshri said, even though Bharat Maharaj became a deer, his mind was absorbed in Krishna. So that was the best thing to happen, I felt. What is the use to have a human body, but mind is not absorbed in Krishna? What's the use to have there is no use. If you're a human and you don't think of Krishna, then Shrama Evahi Kevalam, says the Bhagavatam, that you've wasted it. So every opportunity we get, we should try to think of Krishna in whatever way we can. Bhaktin Shraddha said, if Bharat Maharaj was on the right track in his spiritual progress after he went to the forest to live a spiritual life, why did he have to face an impediment in his spiritual practice in the form of a deer? Because there's a cleansing process. And even as we become determined in the beginning to perform spiritual life, we will have to face this stage called Anartha Nivritti, unless you did it in your last life. And when you come to Anartha Nivritti, there's all kinds of obstacles that you have to overcome. And as Prabhupada writes in the light of the Bhagavat, these obstacles that sometimes give us missteps in our practice, they may not be detrimental, but they may become the pillars to success. And the secret is this: don't give up. And Prabhupada mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita, in the verse, Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisa. He said, even if someone shows some worldly character as they're performing devotional service, if they're fixed in their determination, you should consider them to be saintly, because they're going to be successful. And in the next verse, Krishna says, Shri Prambhavati Dharmatma Shashvat Chantim Nagachati Konteya Pratijani Hinami Bhakti Pranashiti. He's telling Arjuna, declare it boldly that my devotee will never perish, because once somebody's taken to the path, then you'll be successful. You may have to go through a few obstacles to make you stronger. How do we ever get stronger anyway, right, Shraddha? If you're performing some, an athletic, if you're developing physically, you have to face resistance, and otherwise, that's how we get stronger. And then we have, I finish my sadhana in the morning mostly, but sometimes I feel the inertia to chant. However, I feel that this inertia is becoming lesser and lesser of late. Is that something that shows I'm doing something that's right? Yes, it does. Bodies, who is it, Newton? Bodies in motions tend to stay in motion, and bodies at rest tend to stay in rest. So use inertia in your favor. If you're moving, keep moving. Don't stop. Even if it doesn't seem perfect, at least keep moving. Because yes, and then if you start to develop some momentum, that is a sign that you're making advancement. Tadiya Seva, I like your point of being vigilant in the path of devotional service. Even little inattentiveness can lead one to fall down from the path of devotional service. Example of Jad Bharat, example of Ajamil can be cited here, and the consequences of inattentiveness. And Srivata says, thank you. Radhakripa is offering obeisances, mine to you. How could Bharat Maharaj have, how could Bharat, Ashraya Madhava, how could Bharat Maharaj have remained steady? In Bhagavad Gita, misplaced compassion of Arjuna was corrected by Lord Krishna, who was present there. Yeah, it's better to have association. This comes out in some of the commentaries. If he had had a guru, he could have gone there and said, what should I do with this deer? And the guru would have said, take it to an animal shelter and get back to your meditation. Ram Baru, Hare Krishna, my obeisances to you. I like the statement that we should guard ourselves from the impressions that the varieties of manifestations of three modes. But being in material body, we need the emotional satisfaction through what we are associating, mostly in the three modes, how to draw the line between them. Well, we draw the line between them by staying very steady in our practice of devotional service and developing discrimination. And Queen Kunti prays for it. She said, give me the discrimination to see the difference between spiritual attachment and material attachment. Don't let me be sentimentally attached to my family. Let me be attached to them only based on my attachment to you. So you have to ask Krishna for that. And the next one, Radhakripa Prabhu, Bharat Maharaj did everything right except one thing. Whereas in the current age, I'm speaking of myself, I am probably only doing one right thing, rest all wrong. How should I feel hopeful of sticking to the right thing? Well, if you're doing a devotional service, it's very powerful. And if you're doing especially the primary practice of chanting Hare Krishna, that's the main thing that you have to do and remember, and you're going to be okay. Apara Gaurangi and Sri Antariksha offer their obeisances, mine to you. We should never think of the mind to be fully conquered. Treat the mind like a wild animal who can potentially be dangerous at any time. And Gandharvika, Dandavats, mine to you. The point that by practicing sadhana, one can become as strong as Mount Everest gives me hope and confidence. Yes. And finally, Mayank, I certainly now seems to me that mind is a wild animal. Yeah. So you're not alone. Great yogis, all kinds of practitioners have fought with the mind. And stay engaged in service and make sure that you do your level best to stay in contact with spiritual sound vibration, because it's Krishna himself and he'll help us. And when Krishna's helping us, then we have every expectation of being successful. Take his help. Shraddha, what else?
But there are a few questions and some comments.
Okay,
On Facebook.
let's hear it.
So I'll just go in the order they appeared. So Bhakt Alex Zarinov, he is actually quoting from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, from the 7th chapter, the 102nd verse, and which talks about reading books and creating and defining samadhi. A sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature like the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his progress. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principles of Shruti and Smriti, Puran and Pancharatra authorities, the make show of devotional service should at once be rejected. An unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literature, one can see the all-pervading localite aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi.
See, the importance of reading Prabhupada's books is right there. And it's absolutely inspiring and charming all at once when we see how Krishna is quoting from Shastra. Here in this verse, he's saying, there are rishis, and then there's the Upanishads, and they say this. So how much we should be attached to hearing from the sages, hearing from the Upanishads, if Krishna likes it. What to speak of Lord Chaitanya? When he's teaching Rupa and Sanatana Goswami and others, you'll notice he's quoting right and left from Gita. So Gita should be our mainstay also. We should know Gita. If you make Gita your best friend and constant companion by taking shelter and bathing your intelligence by going through the conversation, it's so fulfilling that your mind will get used to that kind of subtle enjoyment. And this is what Krishna says protects us from falling down in the material world. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasa dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. So param means a supreme, drishva, we have to see, taste something higher. And when we do that, then the lower tastes just naturally are not interesting to us at all. So we have to get a subtle enjoyment. And I was thinking about it yesterday on Ekadashi, because it was a fast day, and I was thinking that how does one not be disturbed by fasting? And I was thinking by becoming absorbed in a more subtle kind of enjoyment. And if your mind is thinking about Shastra, you're thinking of Krishna, you're chanting, you're engaged in service, you're looking at the deities and so forth. There's a subtle kind of enjoyment that helps us overcome any kind of attraction to the lower enjoyments in the material world. That's altogether possible in bhakti because we use all our senses, and we have to purify them by keeping them engaged. And when we have that subtle enjoyment, we'll be able to very easily not become attached to the material world. Any last points, Shraddha?
There's a comment by Anand Vrindavan Mataji and two more questions.
Okay.
How do we want? Should I read all of them? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear her comment.
Okay. Anand Vrindavan Mataji says that Sukadev Goswami prays in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.17 that let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all auspicious Lord Shri Krishna again and again, because the great learned sages, the great performers of charity, the great workers of distinction, the great philosophers and mystics, the great chanters of the Vedic hymns, and the great followers of Vedic principles cannot achieve any fruitful result without dedication of such qualities to the service of the Lord.
That's so nice. What a nice verse to introduce. Thank you very much for that, Ananda Vrindavan. Yeah, if we associate with Krishna in all his different forms, we'll get that sublime taste and we'll be able to come to Nishta. And what are the comments or questions?
One is from Namrata Katwate from Australia. Her question is that during the course of our life, because of past impressions, we have a lot of desires that are opposed to our actual goal. They are not really what we want, but we want those things because of our tendency to enjoy separate from Krishna. The question is, does Krishna take these desires seriously if these desires are fleeting and we are trying to redirect ourselves?
No, Krishna doesn't take those seriously. What he takes seriously is your intention within your heart. This is mentioned in the Bhagavatam when Bali Maharaj surrenders unto Vamandev. Then it's mentioned there that actually Bali had it in his heart that he wanted to surrender it, even though there were so many obstacles externally. Vamandev recognized his intention in his heart. And even if you have one molecule of good intention in an ocean of faults, the sincerity that you have there will overcome all the faults because that's what Krishna picks out. In fact, there's a verse from the Bhagavatam, 11th canto, Vrishrijati hridayam na yasya saksha, darir ravisha bihitopya goganasha, pranaya rashanaya dhritangripad sabhavati bhagavata pradana ukta. And this verse mentions that even if somebody accidentally chants Hare Krishna, Krishna takes it personally and he goes, he just chanted my name. She just said Hare Krishna. And then he starts helping. What to speak of, the verse says, if somebody is trying, they lean into it. So these sensual kinds of distractions that are there are no match for devotional service. And hang on to that one molecule of sincerity and practice to the best of your ability, and you will be successful without a doubt. No question about it. Krishna will help. He's much more powerful than those latent impressions or active impressions that are there within the mind. They will be overcome. And the last question of the night.
The last question, so I'll take the last question that was posted on Facebook. Okay. And this is from Suryakund Prabhu. And he's saying that why does it seem that materialistic activities are natural, whereas trying best to be in spiritual platform appears to be difficult?
Well, that's because of conditioning. After being conditioned in a certain way, anything seems natural. Like there are people that have become conditioned to like nicotine and smoking cigarettes. And so for them, it's unnatural to not smoke a cigarette. In fact, they never stop. As long as they're awake, they have a cigarette in their mouth because they've become used to it. Same with alcohol, same with people who are addicted to any kind of mode of nature in this world. And it takes a little while, doesn't it, to overcome these and reposition ourselves. So first of all, we should understand what our natural condition of happiness is. And if you read Bhagavad Gita, you'll understand that there is no happiness in Rajas and Tamas. Zero. You won't get it. You can only get even material happiness through sattva. Sattva is happiness. In Rajas and Tamas, Rajas means you're anticipating happiness, but you never get it. And Tamas means you're right in the muck. You're down in the, you're in the slop and you're getting creamed and it's really hard to get out of. So live a sattvic life and then live a super sattvic life, rise above the modes of nature. And when you touch Brahman, then Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakangshati Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. You don't have the burden of material life anymore, and you'll actually be bursting with happiness because you've touched Brahman. What to speak of, coming to a devotional service in a full-blown form. This means anannomayo bhyasat, you're embracing the eternal source of all joy. And that is manifest in our relationship with Krishna. And that's what Lord Chaitanya is offering us, everyone. And it doesn't matter where we're starting from. He came and extended himself through this process, as did Prabhupada, to give us an opportunity through hearing Shastra, through chanting the holy name, worshiping the temple, associating with devotees, and taking active part in the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. If you're doing that, you're going to be successful. And then you'll see actually that you replace that lower so-called happiness with real happiness. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And we'll just have a quick kirtan to end the class tonight.
Maharaj, there's one comment for you from Scotland. Can I?
From Scotland, of course.
Thank you, Maharaj. This is from Bhakti Vinod Das. Brian Bhakti McLeod. I don't know if I pronounced the name right. Brian Bhakti McLeod. He says, Hare Krishna from Bhakti Vinod Das in Scotland. Nice to see you continuing with your service in a steady way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. From your lips to the Lord's ears. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Your cameras on and dance at the dance contest. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Rama
Hare Rama, Rama
Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare
Rama, Hare Rama.
Haribol! Nitai Gaura Haribol! 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 Hari Haribol!
Haribo, Gaur Premanande.
Jai!
Jai, Jai, Jai Ho.
Hari
Hari Haribol.
Tiger Haribo,
Shouting. Haribol! Nitai Gaura Haribol! চাল হবে না
गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल।
Gaur Premanande. Jai. Team ISKCON, Jai.
Jai.
Dandavad Pranam Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. You can have your fun time now.
Keep the vibration going. Jai.